Hey everyone, it's Julie. Today we'll be making lasagna with bechamel sauce. This was the best lasagna I've ever made and I had to share it with you guys immediately. So let's get started. We're going to start by making the meat sauce. The exact recipe along with instructions can be found over on my website, cookedbyjulie.com. So let's start by sauteing some onions in olive oil until they're nice and translucent. I like lots of red chili flakes, lots of fresh garlic. I felt like it needed just a little bit more olive oil. And in my opinion, what makes a great lasagna is great fresh ingredients. All right, so after I added the garlic, I just sauteed it for about 10-15 seconds. I then added the fresh basil. Fresh herbs tend to burn really quickly along with garlic, but once you add the meat, the temperature will reduce and it will all be okay. We want to brown the beef completely. I like to season the beef once it completely browns. Again, we want the fresh ingredients to kind of speak for themselves, so all you really need to season the beef with is salt and pepper. I threw in some fresh oregano, dried oregano, sorry. You may certainly grind up some carrots and parsley, celery, and add that here. I normally do that, but because I'll be using San Marzano tomatoes, they're on the sweet side, I omitted the carrots this time. So I want to quickly talk about the tomatoes I used. I used 3 cans of San Marzano tomatoes. This is not a sponsored video. I am not being paid to show these. I bought these at an Italian market. If these aren't legit, well, then they got me. But they tasted amazing. Little on the sweet side and pricey side, but totally worth it. I make lasagna like twice a year, so I didn't mind splurging. The tomatoes came with basil. I would have preferred without the basil and add my own fresh basil, but they didn't have any without basil. These tomatoes were super delicate, so I just went in with a masher and mashed them up a little bit. You'll still get chunks throughout the sauce if you like that, or you can just mash it until they all break down. I added some water, seasoned with salt and pepper. This is completely up to taste. However, try to under-season at first because this will simmer for about 2 hours over low heat and most of the water will evaporate. We can always season towards the end. I added about a cup of red wine. You may add as much or as little as you'd like. Gave everything a stir. We are going to cover this and let it simmer on low heat for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We want that meat to be super, super tender, flavorful, red, like so. Give it a stir, check for seasoning, make sure it tastes delicious. And now we're going to make our bechamel sauce. Very simple. You'll need some butter, all-purpose flour. You may use unsalted or salted butter here. Once the butter melts, sprinkle in the flour and whisk over high heat. Cook it for an additional 30 seconds. We want to cook the flour taste away, if that makes any sense. Add the cold milk and whisk away. Lower the heat to medium-low and we want to cook it for about 10 minutes, stirring occasionally until it is nice and thick. I grated some fresh nutmeg. That's optional. You don't have to, but I like it. We're going to add the cheeses. I added a 4-cheese Italian blend, but you may add whatever cheese you prefer. I also grated some fresh Parmesan cheese. So technically this is a 5-cheese lasagna. Make sure to turn off the heat before adding the cheese. Season to your liking with salt and pepper after adding the cheeses. You may use white pepper here. And we're done with the bechamel sauce. You don't need ricotta unless you want to turn this into a 6-cheese lasagna. I will not hold it against you. All right, so let's get ready to put everything together. I used a 9 by 13 baking dish. I started with a layer of meat sauce. I used fresh store-bought pasta. I had to cut some pieces to make it fit. That's a good problem to have. Definitely not a good problem if it were too small. You can certainly make the pasta from scratch if you only make lasagna for special occasions. Definitely not something you want to do on a weeknight, but homemade fresh pasta would be just you showing off in a good way. All right, so I added some more meat sauce, some bechamel. As you saw, I just mixed it with the meat sauce, and here I'm using pearl mozzarella because it's what I had on hand, but you may certainly use fresh mozzarella, buffalo mozzarella, and you want to continue layering until you reach the top. So it's pasta, meat sauce, bechamel, and fresh mozzarella. Repeat. And I was a die-hard fan of The Sopranos. I remember one episode Carmela said her lasagna secret was adding fresh basil under the cheese, and that always stuck with me. So in the final layer, I added the fresh basil and some shredded mozzarella cheese. I covered this, placed it in a preheated oven at 375 degrees for about 30 minutes. This is what it looked like when it came out of the oven. It still needs to go back in there to get golden brown and bubbly and delicious like this. I cooked it for an additional 15 minutes or so. When it came out of the oven, I let it sit for about 30 to 40 minutes. If you don't let it sit, it will collapse and it will flatten a bit. I think you want that. Now, this lasagna was out of this world. Am I saying it's authentic? No, but it was the best lasagna I've ever made. I used delicious fresh ingredients. You may even throw in some pork, just anything to your liking. But first, give this recipe a try, just as is. You will not be disappointed, I promise. It was so cheesy, saucy, creamy, and flavorful. I hope you guys give this recipe a try, please. I wanted to show you a slice of it. Look at the basil creeping in the back. Just so delicious. This with a salad, bread, and red wine would be a party. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I want to thank you all so much for watching.